Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. My name is Ruben Aguilar, and today we are discussing the 2014 documentary, Approaching the Elephant. With me, of course, Jacob Aguilar. How are you, Jacob?
Doing good, Ruben.
Approaching the Elephant was directed by Amanda Wilder, and it's about the Teddy McArdle Free School in New Jersey. And it follows this school as it is in its inception, it looks like, as you follow these students as well as the director. I believe his name is Alex, or was Alex. And it is a fascinating documentary. Definitely recommend it because it's a story of a free school. What do I mean by that? No curriculum, no rules. What can go wrong, right? Plenty. But there is this idealism imbued in its philosophy that is pretty fascinating. And as on the face of it, I would be very much against a school like this, especially if you asked me about 10 years ago or 12 years ago. How would I feel about a school that had no rules, no curriculum? It allowed the students as young as 11 maybe?
Yeah, I think so, 11.
To decide what they want to do that day. Not necessarily study, but to do. I would be horrified by it, but I found myself as naive as I felt that the school director was, and the parents, and I guess the board of the school. I'm saying I guess because it was shot in such a way that it was a free kind of shot. It was very free, as is indicated in the free school. You just had a director putting the camera there and just following. There's no voiceover. There's nothing to manipulate you. I don't even remember if there's any music. It's just following these students. And I did find myself rooting for them, rooting for the director. I think there's some real good idea behind this. I think there's some pure motivation behind a school that just wants to allow the students to be free. Now think about it for a moment. Right now in the news, we're talking about schools and parents up in arms because they feel like their children are being indoctrinated. Now this swings the other way. No indoctrination, no nothing. And I kind of appreciate it at some level, although I also want to tell these parents and these teachers, they're children. They need some direction. But I do want to say that as I'm watching it, I felt like it was answering and asking very important questions. Questions like, what is the purpose of school? I mean, sometimes it's good to go back to those basic questions. How do you run a class? What does a successful class look like? And what are the limits of freedom? Specifically freedom in a classroom. There's a lot of things I do like about the class. Despite some of the problems, of course, that are there are a couple of things I want to mention that I thought they did well as educators. Of course, thumbs down to their approach to teaching, but thumbs up to their motivation, or should I say their inspiration and their motives. Real good documentary, Jacob. What do you think?
Ruben, you did such a good job explaining it, just because everything you shared, I was like, yes. I will add a couple of things, though. This was done in black and white. I believe you shared that. It is just, no, you didn't share it? I thought you did. It definitely, like Ruben shared, there's nobody manipulating it. It takes, you're not even sure which day. Is it a week? Is it a month? But I find out later, looking into it, it's a whole year, and you get some inclination of that later on in the video. I mean, in the film, but they don't tell you. A week later, a month later. And so that being said, you're just not sure what's, the days are all kind of meshing together. And you're following these teachers who are, really believing what they believe in. They really do. And there's one point in the film where one of I think it's the director you're sharing, Ruben, that says to another teacher, hey, I think in 20 years we'll kind of know if this worked or not, or if this was something, that is worthy, And so as you watch the film, it because it's a little distracting in the classroom sometimes, it seems like a little bit chaotic. I felt like the filming was that way. And I think it was done on purpose, just to let you get that feel like, hey, there's a lot going on in this classroom. There are times, Ruben, where I was watching and I felt a little stressed because I felt like the kids were going to hurt themselves. The teachers pretty much were hands off, and not always. They would say, oh, we're going to be there for safety. But you learn later on that there were some kids who hurt themselves because they're getting hammers. There's a time where if they want to do some carpentry work or learn how to work with wood, they're doing it. And you go, okay, that's cool. But at the same time, are they really being taught how to use the tools? I never saw that. And I kind of wish I would have saw that. I wish the filmmaker would have shown that if that really was happening. Maybe it wasn't happening. And so the visual, like you were sharing, Ruben, excellent. One of the best documentaries I think I've seen in a long time. Now, at the same time, the content, what's going on in the classroom, I was stressed out of my gizzard. I was thinking, man, have these people ever read Piaget? Had they ever been to a psychology class to figure out that children are children and adults are adults, and you're to guide them? Because I think that they put them in an equal plane. Like, hey, we're gonna have these meetings, and I think it was wonderful. One of the wonderful things that did come out of these classes or of this school is that the kids did learn how to talk with one another. At the end, they were producing these meetings, which they had very often, where there would be a leader. I think that was a real big plus. I'm sorry.
When you say they learn how to talk to one another, you're indicating the idea of they learn how to negotiate through these committees. They know how to talk, but they learn how to speak their mind and articulate and negotiate socially through this meeting, and I agree with you.
Yeah.
That's what I saw that could be very useful.
Oh, for sure.
For any school to kind of give, in terms of motivating students, giving them some kind of power, some kind of voice.
Yeah.
Where you saw the girl, I forget, maybe her name was Lucy. She mentioned that a lot of times she really took ownership of that. She couldn't have been more than 12 years old, and she was saying, I'm calling a meeting. I want to recommend these kind of things. And she learned the language of spearheading a meeting and calling on people. And I thought I agree with
big plus.
That was great. There was also a very interesting quote. Mm-hmm. Now this goes toward a teacher stated to the group of kids, do you want to go to what's the wording they used? Would you like to, those of you who want to go to the Democratic meeting can go.
Right.
So they don't even have to go. Those of you who want to. I just thought of this. I thought of how refreshing would that be if the admins told us that. If you want to go to a meeting, you can go. Because I really feel, I brought this up before, but I really feel that meetings are often a waste of time.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if you're doing what you need to do. Why do I need to go to a meeting? So I really like this idea of democratic meeting if you want to go.
It was such a highlight of the film, though, because I was thinking, what are they doing here? Is there anything positive coming out of it? And that was one of the positives with these teams. They really had a heart, though, too. And you mentioned that with the director. I felt like he was a little manipulative. He was a manipulating person at the end, where they were going to dismiss the student.
The school director.
The school director, not the director of the film. Thank you, Ruben. The actual school director. He was dismissing a child who was definitely, you see him throughout the film, his name is Gio. He is causing chaos. You would think they should have dealt with that maybe in the first week, but they kind of let him loose throughout the year. 3 weeks left of the school, they decided to basically expel him. And the kids were like, yeah, we're going to keep him. And he's like, let me tell you how I feel about this. And you could tell that he's just upset, and that's fine. And then he's talking to another kid about it. I feel like he's manipulating the kid, like, hey, you know what? I'm upset. I'm not sure if this is the best place for him. And of course, that kid comes back and says, yeah, I think we should dismiss this child. I didn't like that part because I felt like we have to remember as teachers, Ruben, that we have such, with our words, we have such power. And even though that these teachers were saying, hey, you guys were all Democratic. No. When it got really to the nitty gritty regarding safety and all that, they had to step in. And when they
Well,
did, and sometimes the kids were like, no, we want to do it our way. And like, oh no, we
well,
have to.
how can you blame the kids though? You can't.
No, I
I know
don't.
you're.
I
I know
don't blame
you're
the kids.
I
I
know
blame
you're
the
mentioning,
adults.
and absolutely, and you're mentioning Alex, the school director.
Right.
So I have mixed feelings about him. On one hand, I agree with you totally that it's erroneous thinking, the idea that students can handle this kind of responsibility all by themselves. I actually kept thinking about Lord of the Flies as I was watching this.
I swear I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a great metaphor for it, because it's kids with too much. And you know what's some of the theory kind of as you're watching it, what's behind it. It's the idea of teacher as facilitator. And so I've brought up the school in the past, big picture model. We haven't really gone deeply with it, but this idea that students initiate it, at least to the level of what they're learning, student initiated. You ask them their interests, and they're motivated. They're more motivated and part of it. There's a lot of truth to that concept. The problem though is it's too free. It's the idea of there's boundaries in freedom. It allows you, if you create certain boundaries, you're going to find more there ultimately, certainly for students because they're so young. But I do like the fact, because we've talked about it on this channel. So here's a plus for this director, school director, Alex. And I felt for the poor guy. I mean, he created this school, or he had been part of the founding of it for good reasons. He said he was bullied as a kid. He didn't like school. So some of these things that went into it are coming from a real good place, and I really respect that.
Sure.
The idea of being bullied, the idea of not being protected by school officials, the concept of what do you do when a kid doesn't want to go to school? These are some good questions that are being raised by this. And so here's what I like though, and I appreciate as well, is he had skin in the game. He's an administrator that was in it. He didn't just hire teachers and go, all right, have at it, while I sit up here in an ivory tower in my little office. He was in it every day, and I respect that. As a result, you know that by the end of the year, not only do they have to expel a kid, but they realize we got to rethink some things based on the Geo situation, the kid that you.
I think, Ruben, though, I felt for the Geo character because he definitely had a need. I feel like they weren't being addressed, and if they were on top of that, they would. But maybe that wasn't a place for them. But you did say something true, Ruben. I mean, you said a lot of things that were true, but the thing that really resonated with me right now is that you felt for this director, Alex, because he really was putting skin in the game. And you know what? The reality is this: our schools need to change, and this guy did it. He really did. I mean, there's some part in the film, another teacher says, you did it. Meaning he took a step forward. Maybe he failed, maybe he fell down. I don't care. He took a step forward. What am I doing? Because there's definitely some problems in education. And we're talking about it even this whole week regarding things that are.
You helped start a podcast.
Yeah.
So that's something. You're trying to come up with ideas to improve teaching. So you're in your own thing. I'm in my own thing. He's in his.
Yeah.
But so we're not just complaining. Although you and I complain, at least we're trying. And I think it's valuable because 12 years ago, I would have probably dismissed this guy as being outlandish and outrageous. But you're right. He's hitting on important topics here, and he put himself out there. By the way, do you know what the Approaching the Elephant title comes from?
I think it was a J.D. Salinger quote, correct?
Yes. Approaching the Elephant is a quote from a story called Teddy. Story titled Teddy. And the Teddy is the Teddy McArdle in the Teddy McArdle Free School. And this Teddy character was, I don't know, 8 years old in this story by J.D. Salinger, where he's just this absolutely, I would say, brilliant kid who just decides to learn on his own. People, and a man approaches him one day and just looks at him and says, "What? Why?" Just sort of it takes an interest in this kid, but I think the spirit of the school is based on this concept of a kid who just wants to learn on their own, that kids are natural explorers. And if you leave them to their own devices, they would come to that point of growth on their own. The problem is it doesn't feel real because kids are kids, and you will have some that will go too far off the ranch, as we saw in this movie. Oh, yeah. I will say this, they forgot one part of the J.D. Salinger story. So I recommend people read it. Teddy by J.D. Salinger. They get the title. And the Approaching the Elephant, there's a whole sequence in the story about this idea of how to teach kids, but they left one thing off, and I think it's important. The Teddy mentions, because he explains his theory on teaching, but he also says a kid should first learn how to meditate before he teaches. And I think that's a real valuable thing to consider, that they didn't do this in the Teddy McArdle school, that as far as I could see.
They kind of calm them down beginning, or
they didn't calm them down in any way. They didn't have them focused in any way. And I think that's a very big thing that's lacking from the story. So
I thought it was interesting, though, Ruben, before you go on, that there was like 261 of these schools before they were trying to start this 260. So in my mind, I'm thinking there's other schools like this, and I'm sure they're different. I'm sure they've like the things that you just shared regarding kind of calming yourself before, like kind of previewing the day for them, and I don't think they were doing that like you shared, and that was one of their problems.
I have this thing, and I know we're probably needing to sign off. I have this, as I was watching it, and I could just imagine, I know I felt some of the anxiety you felt of this idea of where is the teaching going to happen? What's going on? But part of me also thought, well, there are schools out there in our county that are not that far off from this, where no teaching is going on because of the behaviors left and right. So there's hardly a difference in some cases. But as I was watching it too, though, I couldn't help think, I'm not sure if these people are that far off, only because it's very persuasive to ask a kid, maybe a little bit older though, maybe the problem was these kids were too young, but maybe a high school class, it's a very persuasive thing to ask them, would you like to come to math? We're about to study this in preparation for robotics or the AI, and you ask them, or you can go to something else where they're doing this over there. I think that the idea of a free school is a very persuasive one, especially if you're talking about older kids, and it just has to be done right. And if I had a choice to run a free school, it wouldn't be like that one. It would probably be something like, read what you want. Not do what you want, but maybe read what you want, and here are the choices. And it might be something having to do with topic or level of interest.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, no, with that, Ruben, I would say again, I definitely would also share with people that I recommend the film, just because, especially for teachers, because there is things you can pull out of this, and even the respect of these people who are giving their year. Actually, I think this program was for 2 years, and the documentarian videotaped both years, but focused on the first one. And just to say, hey, this was a great challenge, and they did get to some of their goals that they achieved, but many of them no. But just to see that they were putting their skin in the game, like you shared, Ruben, and it's just worthy to watch just because of that.
Very good. Please check it out, everybody. Approaching the Elephant. And one of the great documentaries on education. There's a few out there. And we hope you enjoyed this channel. Please like and subscribe, and we will see you next time. Goodbye.